the bartending and juggling, and if I wasn't working in a club, I was out partying myself. And then I bumped into a friend of mine who I hadn't seen since school, and we just caught up, and I said to him, look, come to the pub and we'll go and we'll get a drink together, we'll hang out, we'll catch up, it'll be really good to see you again, and then we can sort of reconnect. And he said, look, it'd be really great to catch up again, but I don't go down the pub anymore. I was like, why would you not go to the pub? And like a typical British guy, that's like the only thing we do. You go to the pub. Irish as well, so that makes it worse. And he was like, I've started practicing my religion now. And now I'd always been interested in religion and in sort of different people's ways of living. I'd spent a period in care growing up, and I'd lived with a Jewish family for 2 years. And obviously I'd grown up Christian, so I'd kind of been exposed to a wider range of religious experience than most people. So he said to me, so we went down to a cafe, and I just went there not with no intention of converting, with no intention of becoming Muslim or going down any sort of like path. I was just curious as to, these people were in the news all the time, like not that far after 9/11, and I was just sort of thinking that, look, let's just see what they're all about, see why they choose to make the decisions that they choose to make. Why is it that they live in that sort of way? And so that was basically the first step to me going and meeting him. We ended up meeting and talking regularly for about 6-7 months. Give me 1 second. So after about 6 months of just meeting and catching up, and I kind of realised that for me this was something different and it resonated, and that I wanted to become a Muslim and live my life as a Muslim, which was a massive change. I mean, stop working in nightclubs and stop drinking, which again for an Irish person from an Irish family is not sort of normal. My family all had a good laugh at the idea of me not eating bacon, because I used to love bacon. And so I did it though, and I became Muslim. And after, I suppose, 1.5 years or so, I decided that I felt it was a good idea to go travelling. At that time, no ISIS, no civil war, it was a completely different situation, sort of 2005. And I was going to go to Syria and just work with orphans, go and help out, learn a bit of Arabic, travel around, maybe go to Saudi or Jordan, or do you know what I mean, do an Umrah, like just see a bit of this new world that had opened up in front of me, that I was kind of a part of now. And at the airport, that's where it all started to go wrong. The police stopped me. They held me for 9 hours, I remember that, and I remember thinking that there must be something wrong here, because I've never done anything wrong. And especially back then, I had this idea that just talk to the police, tell them anything they want to know, give them everything, and then they'll let you go and they'll understand that they've made a mistake and that there shouldn't be a problem. So literally I spent 9 hours talking to them about everything. And none of that was actually about terrorism. They didn't ask me anything about terrorism, yeah? I think one time they asked me, like, did I think that 7/7 was cool and a good idea? I was like, no, of course not. Like innocent people died. But they were mainly asking me like about my family history, sort of what sort of music I liked. I had to admit to terrible taste in 80s pop music, power ballads, and those were the questions that they spent a long time asking, like, what mosque do you pray at? Nothing related to terrorism. They went and took my DNA and my fingerprints and the whole thing, and then I was just released. I was set off on my way. Look, just don't go anywhere that could be misconstrued. And that was my travel ban at that point. A couple of days before I'm due to fly out to Bangladesh, my friend's mother, whose orphanage it is, who have arranged everything, gets a phone call from the security services. And they say, the young man that you're trying to help get out to Bangladesh, he's a terrorist. Don't help him, don't talk to him. Now, my friend's quite elderly mother, obviously, very understandably, completely shocked by that, and by this accusation. And she freaked out. And next thing I know, I'm served with a control order. And being served with a control order, you're not arrested, you're not put in handcuffs and taken away. Literally, they just came up to me in the street, some guys in suits, and they said, "Are you Cerie Bullivant?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "We're serving you with a control order." And it was like something out of a movie, but it was so abstract and weird because they didn't do any of the things that you would normally expect them to do in sort of terrorism, quote unquote. I just suddenly was given this bit of paper, and I was taken to a police station. I had all this suddenly list of conditions that I had to live my life by, at all times and in all circumstances. And if I ever broke any of those conditions, or I was liable to up to 5 years in prison. And so this, with no arrest, and at this point still I'd never been arrested. I'd never even been in any trouble with the police. I'd lived a perfect life in that regards. And suddenly everything is upside down, and I'm accused of being one of the most dangerous people in the country, but you're not given any evidence, you're not told what you're accused of. At that time I had one sentence to go on. Bullivant is believed to be a threat to our interests abroad. And that's it. And so, on the basis of that one sentence, I suddenly had to live by a control order. The conditions started out a lot more relaxed, but by the end, they included I had a special sort of bat phone thing installed in my house, this big black box. And you picked up the phone, it only called the police. And I had to call the police and tell them every time I was leaving the house. And then every time I returned to the house, I had to call them again. I was under curfew, I had an ankle tag, all these sorts of things. Obviously, I wasn't allowed any travel documents. And it was so ridiculous. Like, as part of the not being allowed travel documents thing, you're not allowed any passport-sized photos of yourself. So when they came and searched my house, they found like photo booth photos of me and a girlfriend from when I was 15, sort of like tucked away in a drawer somewhere that I'd completely forgotten about. And like we're there sort of like sticking our tongues out and, do you know what I mean, doing what 15-year-olds do when they get in photo booths and get a bit silly, yeah? And they took these away. I'm like, why are you taking those pictures away? They're like, you're not allowed any passport-sized photos. It could be used for identification. I can't remember the last time I saw like a picture of sort of a 15-year-old with their tongue out as a passport-sized photo. Do you know what I mean? As a passport photo. I tried to live my life as best I could on that control order for pretty much a year and a half. And as I said, every couple of months the conditions would get more and more intrusive. I was banned from education, I was banned from work, I was banned from basically doing anything that resembled seeking a life. And you got to remember, all of that without even knowing what you're accused of, all of that without even knowing how long it's going to last or how you're going to get off of it. And we were speaking earlier on, you asked me about Muazzam, and I remember when Muazzam came back, I asked him what he thought of the situation here and sort of control orders and what was going on with British prisoners. And he said to me, the worst part of Guantanamo, the worst part of the torture of it, was not the physical beatings or the physical abuse, but it was not knowing what you were accused of or how long you would be in prison, not having any end to the process. After a year and a half of being on this control order, I was at my wit's end. I was just completely paranoid and depressed, and like I had no connection with anybody. I'd been moved out of the house that I'd grown up in. I wasn't able to care for my mother, who had a severe disability, because I wasn't allowed to live in her house. I'd been arrested on one occasion. My mum called me up and she was really ill. And as I said, she had a severe disability. And so she said, look, I need you to come home and look after me. And it was after my curfew. I wasn't allowed to leave the house. So I went anyway, and I went and I looked after her. And the next day I tried to sneak back into the house that I was meant to be staying at. And the police were there waiting for me, and they arrested me. In this period, by the way, as I said, I'd never been arrested before all of this happened. In this period, I must have been arrested 30, 40 times for various breaches. I turned up literally 5 minutes late once to sign on at the police station because the bus was late. And they arrested me for that, for being 5 minutes late. When I went to prison, I grew up in a working class area. I grew up in a really poor neighbourhood, and there were some people who chose a path in life where they knew that prison was a very, very real possibility on a semi-regular basis. And they were pretty tough guys, and that was their, and they were there and around in the community. Do you know what I mean? You saw those people, and you kind of like, that was, the joke was it was an occupational hazard, yeah? I was never in that, do you know what I mean? I saw those people around, but that was never my thing. I always wanted to work hard, sort of get into writing and get out of that area through that path, through telling stories, basically. And so then when I finally went to prison, you just sit there and you look around, you're like, how the hell did I end up here? And you literally, my only experience of prison, my only knowledge about what goes on in prison was The Shawshank Redemption, American History X, and basically American prison movies. And that was it. And so I was like, that first day, you're just like literally just terrified. The dark moments as well. And especially when I was kind of held in solitary, where you're thinking about this case and you're thinking about the way everything is stacked up against you, and you're thinking there's no way that this is ever going to end. Like, I was sure I was going to die in prison. I just couldn't see any way that I was ever going to come out. And I almost did. "23 hours a day on your own is a long time. And over weeks and more extended time, and faith is the only thing that kept me going through it, because there are times where you just lose your mind with
the weight of everything that's on you. You've got a system where you don't even know what you're accused of. How can you find yourself, how can you be found innocent when you don't even know what the case is? And there's so much on top of you, and you're just going to lose it. There's no way. And if you can find the wherewithal to put your head down, then I say to her, I don't think I'm ever going to see my kids like grown up. I still, even now, I don't feel like I just still can't see forward. And then it was so much worse even. And you have these times even now where everything just closes down. And yeah, you can go days and weeks and smile and, do you know what I mean? But, you know, when you know that your freedom is just conditional on someone giving it to you, and it's not really yours, it doesn't really belong to you, your rights aren't actually there. It's there because someone has deemed that you can have them for the time being. And that's why I say I don't feel like I'm ever going to be I don't feel like I'll ever be an old man, do you know what I mean? I know it's just something in my head, it's like, can't compute that. Not in the sense of, do you know what I mean, like, I'll be young forever, do you know what I mean? But, I don't know. Sorry, I'm not speaking very well. I didn't expect to be like this. The way it works is kind of complicated. I had the criminal charges against me, which were for breaches of the control order, but the control order itself isn't a criminal matter, it's a civil matter. So you have to kind of try and fight this criminal case where you say that the breaches were not breaking the law, but you can't argue the civil case about the control order. And what that really means is that you go into the criminal court with the presumption of guilt over you. The jury are told that they have to accept that you're a terrorist, and that you're not allowed to question that or argue against that. And so, as I went into the criminal case about the breaches of the control order, our defence was basically, yes, I breached my order, yes, I went on the run, yes, I didn't stay at my house because I went and stayed at my mum's and looked after her, yes to all of these things that they were accusing me of, but no, they weren't a criminal breach because I had no other choice. The control order was so oppressive, was so destructive, that absconding was the only thing that I could do. And thank God, a jury of 12 ordinary decent people agreed with me, and I was found not guilty on all charges for this case. And the judge actually said that the control order was basically so oppressive that there was no way that anybody could not breach it. It was designed to be breached. And so, bearing in mind I'd just been released from prison, and I'd spent 6 months in prison, and quite an extended time of that in solitary. I just get released, and the first thing they do is put an even stricter control order straight on me. And then I have to live under that now for another sort of about 4 or 5 months as I try and get ready for the High Court case, for the civil case, where I can try and prove myself innocent, which eventually I did. For our own investigations, we found out that one of my mum's friends had got drunk, and called the anti-terror hotline and made an anonymous call accusing me of being a terrorist. She's like, my friend's son has become Muslim, he's 22, why would anyone do that? Why is he throwing his life away? He's been brainwashed by Al-Qaeda. And then when I went on the run and all this information came out, and it was all over the press, she was like, she'd called up my mum and said, look, I think I did something wrong, I was drunk, and I made a stupid call. And so we only had that was our tether of evidence. And we pulled it up in court, and we said to the we got a police officer in there, and we were like, is this part of your secret evidence? And they were like, yes. And we were like, okay, did you go and check why she made these accusations? No. Did you check who she was? No. Did you do any background checks or further investigations and go and question her? No. They'd done nothing else. They'd just taken this anonymous call as verbatim proof against me. Judge finally goes and makes his decision. He comes back quite quickly. He says, look, there's not even grounds to suspect that Mr. Bullivant has been involved in anything illegal, especially any involvement in terrorism. And he said that 3 times. He repeated that phrase. He said, there are no reasonable grounds for suspicion. And he repeated that 3 times. He said, I'm going to be quashing this order, and that I'm not going to allow the state any opportunity to appeal my decision. So at that point, I'm literally completely exonerated, and the government know they've lost. They've been told now that there's no grounds for them to even appeal it. So my solicitor says to me, like, okay, now they're going to relax your control order. Now they'll take it back to the bare minimum. You'll have to do a little bit while we just wait for the order to become law, and then they're forced to get rid of it. They didn't. Even though the Home Office knew I was innocent by that point, a judge had seen it, even though they'd lost the case and they weren't allowed to appeal, until the judge's ruling came down, they kept that control order at its strictest. And more than that, at least 4 times over, they tried to delay the judge's order from coming out by trying to restrict him with the Official Secrets Act. And make him rewrite his judgment again and again and again to try and extend it. I remember the day that we finally heard that, okay, this is it, it's all over, the judgment's coming down, you need to come to High Court to hear it. And they'd been sort of dragging this process out, really elasticating it. And I was so frustrated and angry, I cut off my tag. And then the phone starts sort of going off and the alarms go. So I unplug that and I chuck it all in bags. And at this moment, I'm still actually on my control order. I'm actually breaching my control order again at that moment. And I took all the stuff that they give you. I put it in a black carrier bag and I ran to the underground station so I could get underground so that it wouldn't monitor where I was. And I went to the High Court to the thing. And as they're all sitting there on the other side, I walked over and I tipped the bag out in front of them, and all the little bits and bobs come out and scatter. And on their side, they've got like an army of lawyers, like 10, 15 lawyers, and the police and everyone else are there. And on our side, it's just me and my lawyer sort of sitting there, sort of lonesome on the empty side of the court. And I tipped this out. I just said to them that I think this all belongs to you.